You definitely need to make these chicken fajita rice bowl meal preps. They're packed with protein, they're easy to make, they're cheap, and of course taste delicious, and they're perfect for storing, whether it's in the fridge or freezer for any occasion. We'll start off by making a guacamole. What I have here is 1 avocado. Just slice around that seed. Be careful of your hand. Make sure you do this on a flat bench. Then we can open this up, remove that seed, and then we're going to scoop out the flesh into a large mixing bowl. And make sure you get all of the flesh out of there. Next is half of a small red onion. If they're a little bit larger, just use 1/4 of this. Take off the tip, leave the root intact, and then we're going to make slices across, stopping at the root. Make the horizontal slice, which will break up the outer formation, and then dice this into small to medium-sized pieces, trying to be as consistent as possible with it. Moving on, we need 1 tomato, depending on size, of course, and all macros in this dish will be for the amount I've used. What I'm doing with this is slicing into thin strips across. Stack those strips up and then slice into battens, rotate 90 degrees and dice into small to medium sized pieces. Some people take out the pulp, but I prefer to leave it in. The choice is all yours. What I have here is 1 large jalapeno. It is a little bit too big, so I am only going to be using half for this recipe, but of course you can add the whole thing in there. Take off the stem and then make thin slices across. Make sure they are nice and thin though, then rotate at 90 degrees and dice into small pieces. You can remove the seeds if you wanted to, but I prefer to leave them in. This right here is 5 grams or 0.2 ounces of coriander or cilantro. If you think it tastes like soap, don't use it. But if you are going to use it, just scrunch it up a little bit and then roughly chop. Doesn't have to be too fine. It is actually better on the larger side for this one. Last but not least, for the guacamole, we need 1 lime. We're going to slice this in half and we need the juice from this. As for the rest of the prep, we need 2 brown or yellow onions. Take off both ends, slice it in half, peel it, you know what to do. Then we're going to make slices across. Do them on a little bit thicker side. It is nice to have those chunks of onion in a fajita mix, and you can make them a little bit thinner if you wanted to. Moving on, we need a red bell pepper or capsicum. This one is huge and is actually bigger than my hand, so I do recommend using 2 for this recipe, and the macros will be included for 2, but I'm obviously only using 1. Slice around the core, stand it up so it's a lot easier to do that. It's just going to minimize seeds going everywhere and a lot of that pith that's in the center. Once you have that done, lay these flat and we're going to make thin slices across. You may notice that I have the skin side up. This is a little bit more dangerous than doing it the flesh side up, just because that skin can catch on the knife, especially if your knife isn't extremely sharp. So I do recommend flipping it over if you don't have the sharpest of knives. Just slice it that way, it's so much safer. Now for an optional ingredient, this is 5 grams or 0.2 ounces of fresh oregano. If you don't want to use this, you can use dried. I'll have details about that in the description, and the macros are pretty much the same, dried and fresh. With this, just roughly chop it. Just make sure there's no large leaves or stems. You should have something that looks like this. Last but not least, for the knife prep, we're going to need 1 kilo or 2.2 pounds of chicken breasts. Slice these open like a butterfly, hence the name butterfly chicken. Slice them in half, it's just going to make it a lot easier to work with. Then slice these into thin strips. Be as consistent as possible with this, that way it will all cook at the same rate. If you have any larger, thicker pieces, they are going to take longer to cook, and then the smaller ones are going to be overcooked. With all of the guacamole ingredients now done, we can just add everything into the bowl. Squeeze in your lime juice. These are not the greatest limes, if I'm being honest. They don't have much juice in them, so a little bit of elbow grease is in order. I like to add just a touch of olive oil, about a tablespoon. It's just going to prolong the life of the avocado and keep it a little bit more green. Hit it up with some salt, and I have an obsession with pepper, so I'm adding pepper in there. I know some people don't, but choice is all yours. Then we can get in there and just start breaking up that avocado. Mix everything together. You can smash the avocado beforehand, but I like to break all of the ingredients in there. Just feel like it gets a little bit better flavor. It's also up to you how much you want to break the avocado as well. I like to leave mine just a little bit chunky, just a little textural thing on my behalf, but of course, do it exactly how you like to do it. And then with all of that done, you have this really nice guacamole that we can place in the fridge until we're ready to serve.
And this right here is the macro card for the guacamole, and let me know in the comments what you think about these new macro cards.
Now for a quick fajita mix, we're just going to add 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 2 teaspoons of smoked paprika, 2 teaspoons of ground cumin, and then the chili is optional, but I add just about 1/4 teaspoon. Can also add a pinch of salt in there as well if you wanted to. You can also season after. Give this a quick mix around. Just make sure everything's incorporated, and that right there is our quick fajita spice mix. Into the bowl with the onions and bell peppers, add half of that fajita mix in there. Then get in there with clean hands and just mix this all together. This is completely optional, by the way. You don't have to do what I'm doing right now. I just feel like you get way better flavor doing this. If you don't want to do it, you can add the whole amount of spice mix to the chicken. But doing it in 2 parts like this, yeah, you just get a way better flavor. Anyway, should have something that looks like this once that's all mixed in. Let's then do the same thing again, but with the chicken this time, and we're adding in the remaining of that fajita mix. And again, with clean hands, just get in there and mix everything really well. Make sure none of that chicken's stuck together. It's just a light coating. It's not completely overpowering and all you can taste is spice, because it's not how you should season food. You actually do want to taste the proteins and the vegetables as well. Also, if you don't want to touch your raw meat, just use a glove or a spoon. Choice is all yours. And you should have something that looks like this. Now, just before we get cooking the chicken and the vegetables, place a saucepan of water over a high heat and bring this up to a boil. We're using brown rice for this recipe, and it's a different cooking method to white rice. We're not going to be using the absorption method just because of the husks around the brown rice. It doesn't really soften up and it just clumps together, and then you get really sticky, messy rice. As for this method, we're just going to bring this up to a boil, drop it in, same as you do with pasta, and then different types of brown rice also have different cooking times, so I'll have details about all of that in a description. Once our water's boiling, just carefully remove that lid, add in a pinch of salt, and then drop in our brown rice. Using 2 cups for this recipe, just give it a little mix, just so it doesn't stick together. Yeah, and then cook this for about 12 to 14 minutes or longer in the details in the description.
With the rice now cooking, place a large pan over a medium-high heat, add in 1 tablespoon of olive oil, then we're going to add in the onions and the bell peppers, spread them out so they're not sitting on top of one another, and let this sit for about 1 minute to build a crust and get that nice brown colour. Then start mixing this around, and we're going to saute for about 5 to 6 minutes until the onions and bell peppers have softened up a little bit. They still have a little bit of a bite to them. We don't want them to be completely cooked. Then we can remove and place them into a bowl, placing that same pan back over a medium-high heat. Add in another 1 tablespoon of olive oil, and once the pan's been brought back to a heat, add in all of the chicken, and if you don't have a large pan, you will have to do this in batches because we don't want to steam the chicken. Spread it out a little bit so it's not sitting on top of one another, same thing we did with the onions and bell peppers. Let it sit for about a minute to build that crust, then fold this all through, and we're going to cook this for about 4 to 5 minutes until that chicken is only just cooked through. We don't want to overcook this because these meals are intended to be reheated, and I'm sure you don't want to eat rubber bullets. Anyway, once that's done, add the onions and bell peppers back in there, and we're also going to add that fresh oregano, or dried oregano, or nothing at all if you don't want to use it. Mix this all through, only getting that heat back into the vegetables just to get those flavors to absorb and become friends. Cook this for about 30 to 45 seconds, then remove it from the heat. And this right here is the macros for the chicken fajitas, as well as the ingredients. Also, you'll find the full written recipe listed in the description. If you've timed everything really well, the rice will be only just finished cooking once we take those chicken fajitas off the stovetop. Drain this through a colander or a sieve, and the macros for the brown rice, including the ingredients and the serving weights. Now, it's up to you how you want to portion this out. Use the weights that I've displayed on those macro cards, or divide everything by 5. It's always best to weigh everything yourself and adjust accordingly to your own ingredients because everything is a little bit different. I don't recommend adding the guacamole on top of this, especially if you're planning to reheat it. I'm only doing this for the video's purpose for presentation. And I'm also garnishing it with a little bit of coriander or cilantro, leaving us with this beautiful looking chicken fajita bowl. It smells fantastic and the presentation's really nice as well. And the final macro card is everything combined into one, leaving us with this complete dish.
Now, once you have these portioned up, just let them cool down for about 10 to 15 minutes. Obviously, I've put the guacamole on for the video's purpose. Just serve this separately, just have it in a different container. When they're cool enough, we can start placing on the lids. These are going to last 3 to 4 days in the fridge. I say 3 just because when it comes to that time, you can place them in the freezer. If you go past 3, it starts getting a little bit dry. The flavor starts to be lost a little bit, but that's up to you how you want to do it. Or you can eat them all straight away. As for reheating these, I do recommend just using a microwave. It's the easiest method. Most places of work also have a microwave. You're not going to whip out a stovetop, start cooking up all of this different stuff. And it brings moisture back into the dish as well. It's the easiest method. Also, just before we go, my cookbook, Dig In, is still 20% off on pre-sale. Grab a copy. I'll leave a link in the description as well as in the comments. And there is a QR code if you're watching this on TV at the end of this video. Thank you so much. With everything said and done though, there's only one thing left to do. And that is, of course, we can then dig in. It's everything you'd expect from fajitas. It's got that nice warmth from the cumin, a little bit of heat from the chili, the smokiness from the paprika, mixed with the guacamole just adds that freshness, and then the rice just soaks all of that flavor in as well. It's a perfect combination, it tastes delicious, and I cannot wait for you to try it yourself. Thanks for watching.